Monsieur d'Artagnan," he cried, falling back a step. D'Artagnan was perhaps about to reply, when a blow, similar to that of a mallet falling on the head of an ox, was heard. The noise was caused by Porthos, who had just knocked down his man. D'Artagnan turned around and saw the unfortunate man upon his back about 4 paces off. "Steve," cried he to the coachman, "spur your horses, whip, get on." The coachman bestowed a heavy blow of the whip upon his horses, the noble animals bounded forward, then cries of men who were knocked down were heard, then a double concussion was felt, and 2 of the wheels seemed to pass over a round and flexible body. There was a moment's silence, then the carriage cleared the gate. "To Cours-la-Reine," cried D'Artagnan to the coachman, then turning to Mazarin he said, "Now, my lord, you can say 5 paters and 5 aves. In thanks to heaven for your deliverance you are Safio are free." Mazarin replied only by a groan. He could not believe in such a miracle. 5 minutes later the carriage stopped, having reached Cours-la-Reine. "Is my lord pleased with his escort?" asked D'Artagnan. "Enchanted, monsieur," said Mazarin, venturing his head out of one of the windows, "and now do as much for the queen." "It will not be so difficult," replied D'Artagnan, springing to the ground. "Monsieur du Vallon, I commend his eminence to your care." "Be quite at ease," said Porthos, holding out his hand, which D'Artagnan took and shook in his. "Oh!" cried Porthos, as if in pain. D'Artagnan looked with surprise at his friend. "What is the matter, then?" he asked. "I think I have sprained my wrist," said Porthos. "The devil, why? You strike like a blind or a deaf man. It was necessary, my man was going to fire a pistol at me, but how did you get rid of yours?" "Oh, mine," replied D'Artagnan, "was not a man." "What was it then?" "It was an apparition, and I charmed it away." Without further explanation D'Artagnan took the pistols which were upon the front seat, placed them in his belt, wrapped himself in his cloak, and not wishing to enter by the same gate as that through which they had left, he took his way toward the Richelieu gate. Chapter LII. The carriage of Monsieur le Coadjuteur. Instead of returning, then, by the Saint Honor gate, D'Artagnan, who had time before him, walked around and re-entered by the Porte Richelieu. He was approached to be examined, and when it was discovered by his plumed hat and his laced coat that he was an officer of the musketeers, he was surrounded, with the intention of making him cry, "Down with Mazarin!" The demonstration did not fail to make him uneasy at first, but when he discovered what it meant, he shouted it in such a voice that even the most exacting were satisfied. He walked down the Rue Richelieu, meditating how he should carry off the queen in her turn, for to take her in a carriage bearing the arms of France was not to be thought of, when he perceived an equipage standing at the door of the hotel belonging to Madame de Gummini. He was struck by a sudden idea. "Ah, pardieu!" he exclaimed, "that would be fair play." And approaching the carriage, he examined the arms on the panels and the livery of the coachman on his box. This scrutiny was so much the more easy, the coachman being sound asleep. "It is, in truth, Monsieur le Coadjouteur's carriage," said D'Artagnan. "Upon my honor I begin to think that heaven favors us." He mounted noiselessly into the chariot and pulled the silk cord which was attached to the coachman's little finger. "To the Palais Royal!" he called out. The coachman awoke with a start and drove off in the direction he was desired, never doubting but that the order had come from his master. The porter at the palace was about to close the gates, but seeing such a handsome equipage, he fancied that it was some visit of importance, and the carriage was allowed to pass and to stop beneath the porch. It was then only the coachman perceived the grooms were not behind the vehicle. He fancied Monsieur le Coadjuteur had sent them back, and without dropping the reins he sprang from his box to open the door. D'Artagnan, in his turn, sprang to the ground, and just at the moment when the coachman, alarmed at not seeing his master, fell back a step, he seized him by his collar with the left, whilst with the right hand he placed the muzzle of a pistol at his breast. "Pronounce one single word," muttered D'Artagnan, "and you are a dead man." The coachman perceived at once, by the expression of the man who thus addressed him, that he had fallen into a trap, and he remained with his mouth wide open and his eyes portentously staring. Two musketeers were pacing the court, to whom D'Artagnan called by their names. "Monsieur de Bellier," said he to one of them, "do me the favour to take the reins from the hands of this worthy man. Mount upon the box and drive to the door of the private stair, and wait for me, there it is an affair of importance on the service of the king." The musketeer, who knew that his lieutenant was incapable of jesting with regard to the service, obeyed without a word, although he thought the order strange. Then turning toward the second musketeer, D'Artagnan said, "Monsieur du Verger, help me to place this man in a place of safety." The musketeer, thinking that his lieutenant had just arrested some prince in disguise, bowed, and drawing his sword, signified that he was ready. D'Artagnan mounted the staircase, followed by his prisoner, who in his turn was followed by the soldier, and entered Mazarin's ante-room. Bernouin was waiting there, impatient for news of his master.